So I think, at its core, agile is just about being adaptable. Um, but still having plans. Like you want to have concrete use cases and things that you're trying to deliver on to improve the business experience and employee experience. It truly is AI that's changing everything. Everybody's talking about it, and it really is everywhere. It's across every department, but it's specifically in HR. The more progressive companies are moving toward an AI that can make sense of the volume of complex information needed. We're in the age, I believe, of optimization of experiences. So we're all adopting technology. We're already there, and now it's just like, okay, how can we make this better and better? What I've seen is there's no strategy in the people space where it's a complete replacement, or we're taking people out of the equation we're taking humans out of human resources. Like that doesn't exist. I don't believe it will ever exist. But it's really channeling the amazing, talented HR professionals, all their skills, and using their skills for what they probably really went to school for, which is the consulting and continuous improvement of teams and managers and things like that.
Hi, welcome to Spottable AF, the bold, brutally honest podcast that rips the buzzwords off the boardroom and gets real about the future of work. I'm your host, Kate Ball, international talent strategist, corporate consultant, and author of the Culture Chronicles. I'm also your no BS guide to what's actually working and what's just HR theatre. In this episode, we're cutting through the noise to explore what it really means to build agile people strategy. Not just another HR transformation, but real measurable shifts that align talent with tech and business outcomes. Because let's face it, if your org chart looks the same as it did 5 years ago, you're already behind. So today's guest knows a thing or two about rethinking the rules. Austin Crowe is a strategic people leader with a proven track record of driving enterprise-wide transformation in fast-paced, high-tech environments. As the HR digital content and AI product manager at Johnson Controls, he's led initiatives that don't just sound innovative, they deliver. So let's welcome Austin so we can dive in and talk about his unique blend of design thinking and agile methodology. Hi, Austin.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, do you want to just do a brief intro to yourself, your career history, and why people should care about what you're talking about today?
Absolutely. Happy to. So, as Kate mentioned, I've been most recently working in HR content and AI product management, but I spent the bulk of my career actually in internal content and communications and also public relations. So a lot of time kind of understanding the employee experience from the realm of, what do employees need from a communications perspective to be successful, to know about changes. And a lot of that ended up being just by virtue of where the world has headed, very digital and technology forward. So, been working with a lot of different systems through the years, but more recently, especially my content experience has kind of led me into this realm of AI product management in the HR space. And so I'm excited to talk about what we're seeing from a demand perspective and kind of a culture perspective from a, kind of AI technology space within HR and people experience.
Awesome. And obviously, you and I first crossed paths back in the Amazon days, but Johnson Controls as well. So you've worked for some really large, well-known businesses, basically, and been very successful within those. So I think the blend of insights you're able to share from a corporate cultural perspective as well is going to be really interesting and useful. But to kick us off, obviously, agile is something, it's a word that gets bandied around a lot, but a lot of our audience here are going to be human resources people, and not everybody is familiar with that terminology. So can you just give us a bit of insight into what it means when we talk about agile methodology?
I would love to. So if you think about agile, you really want to just think about adaptability. Things are changing, as many of your colleagues know. Almost every day, every week, there's a new merger of AI companies. There's a new merger of different systems and features, and things are constantly changing. So what it comes down to is the ability to have a roadmap, of course. Like you want to make sure that you're planning against the needs of the business, that you're constantly getting feedback, but you want to be able to revisit your plans. And I do so weekly. We actually look at what we're delivering and we say, okay, is what we're doing still making sense? Do we need to adapt and move to a different priority or use case based on something we've learned or new feedback that's coming in from our audience, and from employees? So I think, at its core, agile is just about being adaptable. Um, but still having plans. Like you want to have concrete use cases and things that you're trying to deliver on to improve the business experience and employee experience. But you want to revisit those things almost constantly and decide what order is necessary, and kind of move things around as needed.
So, what does this look like in terms of a people operations kind of standpoint?
So, we're constantly looking at, we have inputs coming in, and we're also trying to be proactive at the same time. So we're constantly looking at employees contacting our HR operations service center, for example, and understanding what questions they're asking, especially what questions we think technology could solve for. And also, doing proactive focus groups. So just this past quarter, we did a round with each of our centers of excellence across the company, kind of understanding from, a total rewards perspective, a talent acquisition perspective, what are those pain points? What are those tasks that teams and HR consultants are doing that they really wish technology could help them out with? So it's a lot of just, listening, learning, and then we've got our partnership with a company called MoveWorks, which is a fantastic vendor in the AI space as well. And working with them to understand, okay, we've got all this stuff we want to help automate and make more efficient. What's actually the art of the possible there? And so it's just a constant process of, feedback connected to our roadmap and then trying to execute on as much as we can.
Awesome. And obviously, I mentioned we were both at Amazon at the same time. And this is a company that most people know has grown exponentially
Yeah.
in the last 10 years. I mean, continuously. But at the time I left 2 years ago, I think I'd been in the company longer than 98% of their employees. And that was only 8 years. So when you think of that, it's crazy. But then when you take it a step further and talk about scaling HR as a company is rapidly growing. Applying agile methodology is something that obviously from a flexibility standpoint is important. But can you talk me through kind of, in your opinion, the key to building HR processes that do scale and can grow without falling apart?
Absolutely. I think, things are changing really fast. And, what I'm seeing really in all the companies that I've talked to and worked with is a lot more centralization of processes. So in the past, I think from 2010, for example, to around 2015, and then in between 2015 2020, everyone was just migrating systems and services and processes to the digital world, right? They were just concerned with getting the tools on board, saying they have the right tools and they have their information organized, but the governance was not really there. So how do you maintain those tools and services and products to really grow over time and actually, you know, have less tools at the end of the day? So now we're in this state of optimization where we've got the tools in place, but now we need to govern them correctly. We need to rationalize the applications and tools that we have and try to get everybody into kind of a single funnel. And so what I'm seeing a lot of is using technology at the top of that funnel of services and processes to give the employee and the manager a single place to go in to get HR help or IT help or whatever the functional area may be. And then from there, allowing that technology to connect them through AI, through whatever technology is there to the correct services. Versus there's a page you go to for IT help. There's a page you go to for HR help. There's another page for procurement. We're seeing a lot of companies come together and say, you know what, employee services is a real need. And we should centralize that. So that's kind of what I'm seeing across the board.
And how are you identifying, or how do you recommend people start to identify the right products to use? What kind of criteria are you using to kind of streamline and establish what's adding value and what's just taking up space?
One of the most difficult things is picking a tool. And today, more than ever, the tools that are available are changing. And there's a lot of really big players out in the HR world, like Workday and ServiceNow for content management, and others, obviously. And so it really comes down to budget, first of all. If you want to be kind of best in class and use the kind of proven tools, you can reach out to the mega ones. But I would encourage teams, especially if you're working in a smaller company, to do research, talk to as many companies as you can, and explore as many tools as possible before you make that decision, because different tools will offer different things, and it depends on what your biggest need is. Some companies are so large that they need a way, like maybe audience segmentation is really important to them. So then you may be talking to the bigger companies like a Workday, ServiceNow. If you're a little bit smaller, looking into some startups that are looking for companies to kind of experiment with might be a good option. So I think the big thing there is just talk to as many companies as you can and do a lot of research, and use your network to see what's worked for other companies as well.
And what, in your opinion, has moved the needle the most in the last like 5 years with regards to implementing new technologies in people strategy?
So I hate to be the cliche speaker here, but it truly is AI that's changing everything. Everybody's talking about it, and it really is everywhere. It's across every department, but it's specifically in HR. The more progressive companies are moving toward tools that can make sense of all the really complex issues that employees have in the people space. When we think about things like recruiting, we were talking about earlier, personalization of experiences, there really isn't any other technology that exists, other than AI, that can make sense of the volume of complex information needed to really give employees that sense of, oh, the company knows who I am, it knows what I want, and it can get me there fast. Like I said before, we're in the age, I believe, of optimization of experiences. So we're all adopting technology. We're already there, and now it's just like, okay, how can we make this better and better? And how can we mirror that crazy consumer grade experience that we're now all having with these apps that just they know what we want, they know what we ordered, they're extremely personalized. Employees are coming to work now and they're saying, why do I have to search for all this? Why doesn't the company just know what I need and know enough about me to really help me out? So yeah, AI is definitely at the center, and there are a lot of players in that space that are kind of competing to meet that need.
It takes me back, and not everybody will know this reference because it shows my age, but it takes me back to using Word like 20 years ago, where a little paperclip would pop up and say, "Hey, it looks like you're trying to do this. Would you like some help?"
Exactly.
I'm like, it's weird. It's like a full circle kind of
Yep.
thing we're looking at now, where we're basically saying we want the tech to recognize what we're doing and preempt where we
Yep.
might need assistance, or where, hey, you don't have to do that this way. You can do this, rather than go and search for that information.
Right.
So,
It's like a smarter Clippy.
exactly. It's so strange to me that it's taken this long when it's basically just an extension of what already existed. But again,
True.
I don't pretend to understand the tech. um, in terms of the people side of things, though, one of the
Yes.
kind of biggest fears that I hear a lot is that you lose that empathetic approach when you've got something driven by tech, that you will you will move too far away from being human centric. So what kind of things are you doing, or have you seen being done, to really maintain that personalization rather than go too far in the streamline and tech process?
Yeah, and this is such a great topic, especially in the people space. I think it's really easy to say IT is moving towards a more AI driven chat experience, right? But for HR, I think one of the things that I've seen is when you're branding these virtual assistants and these new operating models that center around AI driven technologies, it it's it has to be branded with the lens of, we want to help you with transactional things that basically Q&A, things that a human doesn't even want to do actually. So you need to update your personal information in the company's system. That should be something that a tool can come in and just easily help with. In the past, I've seen companies where you have to email an HR business partner. They're going to take precious time that they could be using consulting with a team that's having performance issues. Instead, they're going to be going into a people data system and updating your email because there's no other way for you to do that. So, what I've seen is, there's no strategy in the people space where it's a complete replacement, or, we're taking people out of the equation we're taking humans out of human resources. Like that doesn't exist. I don't believe it will ever exist, but it's really channeling the amazing, talented HR professionals, all their skills, and using their skills for what they probably really went to school for, which is the consulting and continuous improvement of teams and managers and things like that. So it's a balancing act of what are the transactional repetitive things that technology can do more easily, but having a multi-tier services process where certain things just don't make it through the technology, and it's like, okay, now a human can come in and help you out with that because the technology couldn't. So
And obviously I'm working as a consultant, so I work with a lot of different companies right now. And going back to what you said, yes, I see this a lot, but I also hear a lot about tech fatigue. Like, there's
mm,
so many tools, we're spending so much time on screens, whether it's a phone or a computer, and always being reachable. From
yeah.
a people perspective and people ops perspective, what are you doing, or are you seeing people do, or recommend people do, to really try and limit that reliance as well? Make sure that we don't get too far in the other direction of everything being tech focused.
Yeah, great question. I think one of the bigger things I'm seeing is kind of going back to the conversation around centralizing services. Part of the reason people have so much fatigue is because the information they need and the services that people need at work are so broadly dispersed across different systems, platforms. You've got Slack open here, and then you've got SharePoint over here, and you've got all these different tools, and people just don't know where to go for what. And that sometimes comes through in the data as tech, tech fatigue. But what it really is it's search fatigue. So if you can kind of centralize that entry point where employees need to go for help, um, easier said than done, getting functional areas that have been siloed for 20 years to come together and say, we need our services together. But if you can, and I've seen companies do it, if you can manage to get together as a company and say, we really want to provide a better experience, um, all of a sudden, you stop hearing that data of, I hate technology, because suddenly technology is actually doing what it was meant to do and giving you one place to go. So it's all about it's all about, it's not about the technology really in the beginning. It's about getting teams connected and working together, and then the technology can come in and support.
And this plays really nicely on your background, because what I'm hearing as an underlying theme is it's all about the narrative. It's all about how you deliver that message in the first place. So, how would you recommend, not in the nicest way of saying, an Amazon, a Johnson Controls, they're huge, and you've got a lot of people driving that messaging, and there's
Yeah.
very clear culture that already exists. But for smaller businesses who are kind of feeling in the dark and figuring out how to make things work for them, what advice do you have in terms of how they are communicating with employees and kind of keeping people on that journey with them as these changes happen so frequently?
Mhm. Well, I think in today's world, especially with younger generations coming in, again, they want a single place to go, and they're kind of craving more of a social experience versus standard email communications. I've had this conversation with every company I've ever supported. you got to think about your channel strategy first, and you need to get that number of channels down to as little as possible. Um, and now with new technology, it's not possible to push communications through the same tools that employees are using to communicate with one another to communicate and get messaging from the company. So what I'm kind of seeing and what I would recommend for smaller companies is, don't think about your comm strategy as this big formal messaging strategy. It's more about getting the must know, and the keyword is must, must know and must do information to the employee in as less words as possible, and right alongside their chats with their coworkers so that they know this is where I go to get information and collaborate. And I'm seeing like newsletters are kind of a thing of the past. A lot of smaller companies, when they start, they think, oh, we got to have a newsletter. You actually don't. You just need to have a channel where you can post kind of real-time updates and things to employees. And then you can always have a space for them to learn more. But what I'm seeing is employees just want like that headline and the really big thing that they need to take out of it. And then you've got like the 5% that want to read through the whole, for example, organizational change announcements, right? There's always those people that want the whole thing, but trying to just get people the things they need. And then, you can have a portal article for people to learn more, but emails are my least favorite form of communication. So that would be my advice. Try to stop
Still
emailing.
defaults for some reason.
Yep.
I've seen more and more companies start adopting tools like Slack. And I think that they're great for the internal kind of community building, but not so great for the at scale corporate announcement, because they can be so hard to monitor and control. So it's interesting when we see these new tools be adopted by companies and how every company adopts them slightly differently. Like, I'm consulting with one business at the moment where they invited me to their internal Slack channel. And I'm not going to lie, all they use it for is to give birthday announcements. And I'm kind of looking at this thinking it's not what they've hired me to do, but I kind of want to stick my nose in and go, look, you're missing out on an opportunity here. There's so much more you could be doing with this. And it seems like such a waste. And I don't really feel like you're getting the value from it. But it's interesting how different companies use different tools in different ways, I think. From your perspective. Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that's a good example of more of the fluff that companies fixate on that they think employees really want, but it can cause them to check out and ignore a channel because they're like, that's just the birthday.
Exactly. Exactly. So with that in mind, and as a nice segue, can you give me an example of something that has been traditional that HR, people operations, or communications have always done that actually you think is working against the curve? It's not achieving what it needs to anymore and needs to be retired.
Yeah, so I will repeat myself a little, just because it's such a clear way to move things in a better direction, and it is that newsletter communication format. A lot of companies' central strategy is, every week we send a newsletter and it has all the things that we think employees want. I think those can work if you have an element of two-way engagement where an employee has opted into certain topics and they're then getting what they think is important to them. For example, like business resource group communications via email tend to do much better because those employees have said, I want to be part of this group and that information is important to me. When you have a corporate newsletter that has 20 topics every week and some of it you care about, some of it you don't, it's really easy to say that I'm not going to read that. So, kind of providing that opportunity for folks to say this is what I'm interested in, and then sending them that information, but also getting away from having everything in one place, which sounds counterintuitive, but it actually gives focus to the messages that people care about. So
okay. So if you were building a people strategy for a brand new startup tech company today, what's the first thing you would put in place?
Oh, good question. A people strategy for a new tech company. I would really think about the fact that there's going to be a lot of new employees who do not understand the company per se. And I think there's a unique opportunity there to brand what that people experience is. Um, what are the kind of culture pillars of that company? What are the things that they really are proud of, whether that be benefits or work-life balance or whatever the things that they're leaning into as a company culture? I would say those should be part of the initial communications there. Um, and then getting help. Like employees are going to have questions about how there's three things that I talk about almost every single day. It's pay, it's benefits, and it's time off. You have to have a way for employees to get information on those things and to view information as easily as possible. So, culture is huge, and I think the first thing people wanna that first impression of the company, what it stands for. The next thought is, okay, I work here. I need these core things, and how do I get help on those things?
And how would you embed agility in a people strategy without making it chaotic?
Good question. I think it comes down to feedback loops and two-way communication. So you need to make sure you're listening, you know, to employees often, and not just listening and taking that feedback, but sharing back what you're doing with that data. So what you learned, and then what you're doing with that data. And as often as you can, employees should have a place to go to see what what are the trends of the company. Like I always say, you've sort of failed if employees are going to Glassdoor to learn about your company. Like that engagement scores, survey results, people survey results. Most companies have those now, or should if they don't. That should all be available, I believe, and it should be shared at town halls. It should be shared frequently and often, and then even if you have some bad data points, share those too. If you have things to work on, um, I would say just kind of just keeping that going, and then continuing to communicate what you're doing with that data in a really agile way. It doesn't always need to be huge, giant changes. It can be small things that are being done throughout the year.
And so, based on what you've seen, based on your network and experience and everything, like in your opinion, what do most organizations get wrong when they're trying to future proof their people strategies?
Oh, I think it's a good it's a good topic. I think over pivoting on um, certain like topics like attrition, or over pivoting on um, kind of that onboarding strategy versus trying to like maintain the people that you have. I think sometimes companies tend to focus more on the people that are kind of not performing and the ones that they think they're going to have to replace, when they really should be focusing on the ones that are just kind of silently doing really good work and providing them a way to share how you could help them out. But what tends to happen is the organizations that have the highest attrition, um, they get all the focus, and the teams that are performing really well and everything seems okay are the ones that kind of then they lose out on some of the improvements that could be had there. So I think it's just making sure everyone has a voice, not just the loudest teams or the ones with the biggest issues.
I love that, because particularly being a recruiter, and some of my career journey, but 20 years in recruiting, and then basically created a job for myself at Amazon because I decided to focus on my passion, which was what happens after somebody starts work. And really built from the fact that as a recruiter, I had people that I'd brought to the business coming back to me to share their journey afterwards, and kind of helping me connect the dots on what I'd sold them on and how that really looked in reality. And one of the key things that I kept hearing and seeing was exactly as you said, this focus on the negative components more so than the positive. the employees that got the most attention were the ones that were considered underperformers. And the ones that were doing a really great job kind of were just pushed to one side and left to get on with it. And so really looking at how you can keep building those people up. I love that kind of positive spin on things, and urging companies to really invest their time and their attention on those people that are most deserving of it. I think that's great. Quick question. We're talking about AI, we're talking about evolution, everything's always changing. What do you think is the most outdated thing most companies are still doing in HR today?
Oh, I think one of the things I've seen really recently with not my company, thankfully, but one that I was networking with, is all of their HR support was being done via email. And so they had regional email boxes that if you're an employee with a problem, you just send an email to this central team of like 20 people per region, and then somebody, whoever has time, picks it up and helps you. That is so outdated and inefficient. And I think there's so much more valuable work that those teams receiving those emails could be doing with their time. So I think just moving away from these traditional things that feel good, they're comfortable. Those of us who've been around for a while, like me, like I love email. I probably always will, but I also know deep down that it's a huge time suck, and you gotta, anything service related, HR operations related. There are so many tools out there and so many better ways to help employees. So just think about how you can adopt even free tools or simple things to make that experience better.
Yeah, most people listening to this will know because I'm very vocal about it in all of my channels, but I'm really critical of the fact that recruiting hasn't changed in 40 years. And I really think there's a need to move towards things like skills-based hiring, for example. And I recently wrote a book about that because I'm so passionate about the need for this. But in terms of AI and exactly what you're doing, where do you see the opportunities in the future for things like the recruiting processes to change, to move away from traditional resumes and interviews that just haven't evolved at all?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research out there on recruiting, and I think probably better than me. One thing that I saw recently, it was a research study from McKinsey, said that companies that introduce AI in their recruiting process reduce hiring time by about 30%. And the reason that's really important is, a lot of employees looking for jobs they're not just applying for one job at a time, they're applying for 20, 30, 40 in this economy, right, at a time. And so when the right person comes through, you need to be able to get them through that process quickly. And I think, this whole notion of, if you're applying for a job, you need to fill out all your experience, copy paste from your resume into Workday or whatever the tool may be.
I was going to say Workday.
It drives me nuts, because the thing is, it's already analyzing your resume. And by the time I copy and paste everything in, it basically is my resume. So just let me upload my resume. And those have been some of the best, what do I want to say here? Those have been some of the best application processes that I've had, is when I upload my resume, I put in a brief comment, and I move on. And I think that's where AI can step in and really help, because it can synthesize that resume and give the recruiter still bullets so they don't have to read the whole thing, but at least the candidate isn't spending, you shouldn't spend, I believe, more than 10 minutes applying for a job. Especially if you have a LinkedIn profile and a resume. So we have to make it easier.
That's why this podcast is called Spottable, because AI, I know we see Pia doing it right now, is moving towards, you do it once, you don't apply for each individual job. Spottable is going to apply for all the jobs for you that you're suitable for, and you only do something once, and then it does all the work. And I can't wait to see that. But
Yes.
one of the things that we measured a lot at Amazon in recruiting was this idea of a frustration-free experience for a candidate. And in the last 5 years, I think that's kind of disappeared with a lot of companies. And AI has an opportunity to come in and really kind of increase that user experience in terms of providing access to kind of updates and questions without a physical human having to be the person to provide it. Because if you think about a recruiter who's reviewing 1,000 job applications, each one of those people wants to know the same thing. Like, am I being considered? How long is it going to take for me to hear back? Am I getting an interview? And then the other questions like, what's the pay for this role? What are the hours? Like, you can have all of that automated now. And it will inevitably add value to that candidate experience, I think. So there's so much opportunity that I don't think people are taking full advantage of yet, even beyond my pet peeve of the resume situation and traditional interviewing. Trust me, I cannot wait to see this change. I am driving the revolution.
Thanks, Kate. We appreciate you.
But on that note, we have gone over the 30 minutes that I try and keep it at, because I know a lot of people listen to this on their way to work or in a lunch break. So just as a final thought, like, finish the sentence for me. What is the future of HR?
Efficient and still human.
Love that. And agile.
And agile. Shoot.
But thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today, Austin. I really, really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope it adds value to people. So on that note, I will let you go, but thank you so much. Have a good one.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Kate. Take care.
Thanks.